My guest on the Microbound podcast today is Travis Kiser. Kiser is a native of Bryan, Texas, just right next door to College Station, Texas. He completed his Master's of Science in Sports Management from Texas A&M University in 2019, and he holds a Master's in Education and Curriculum that he got in 2014. That's where I know him from. Kiser completed his undergraduate work at Texas A&M as well with a Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Geography and a Military Studies minor. Kiser also holds a certificate in Advanced International Affairs from the Bush School of Government and Public Service. I believe in total he taught for 5 years, a mix of teaching and coaching before he eventually landed his current job as a D1 swim coach up in North Carolina. We'll talk about that here on the episode. But prior to his coaching career, Kiser served as an infantry rifleman in the United States Marine Corps. He was assigned to Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division in 29 Palms, California. While in service to his country, he was deployed to Al-Anbar Province, Iraq in 2007 and Helmand Province, Afghanistan in 2008. His awards include Combat Action Ribbon, 2nd Award Iraq Afghanistan, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, 2nd Award. Above all that, he has also been one of my groomsmen in my wedding. I've considered him for a friend for a very long time. As you'll hear on this podcast, he definitely has a sense of humor, and I hope that you enjoy getting to hear my conversation with Travis Kiser. Travis, thanks for being on the Microbound podcast today. I know we've known each other quite a while. It's nice to finally have this as an excuse to catch up. And I know that the hurricanes recently came through a few different times and blew out the power for you, but I hope everything's settled back for you, huh?
Yeah, it's been quite the experience, especially having a 3-year-old and a flock of chickens in my backyard, constantly making sure that everybody's okay and being taken care of. But, you know, it could always be worse.
Do you have names for the chickens?
I've let other people name them, but I don't remember what they are. Other than his name is Ronald. And then
it's good.
He's just the one the girl, I've had her the longest. She survived my dog attacking him, and then another dog attacking him, and Is
it like a twisted thing to call a chicken Ronald, like it's going to end up at McDonald's one day? Is that because I feel like that's your sense of humor? I'm just wondering if that's where that came from.
No, it was just one of the swimmers named it Ronald, and I was like, okay, I can remember that long enough. And they're all going to lay eggs. I'm not going to eat them. They're just egg layers, and I check on them all the time. My wife kind of doesn't like it that I'm always like every once in a while jumping out of the house to go see what the chickens are doing. But
goodness, I never pinned you for a chicken keeper. I feel like Von Miller would be interested in that. He's got like a farm or something now, but geez, my brother has chickens. I don't know that we could ever own chickens because 3 out of 4 of our dogs would murder them before they even like survived a day.
Right. I mean, you just got to have a pen for them, and that's about it. I mean, they're pretty easy once they get their feathers and stuff. You just feed them and make sure that they have a place to sleep at night. And
sounds like a child. No, I'm just kidding.
It does. And then I've got 4 guineas they're like our watchdogs and our they eat all the bugs and stuff, but they make so much dang noise. Anytime I step outside, they're up in the trees cackling and making all sorts of a ruckus. But that's what I got them for.
I feel like the only thing worse than a guinea that's still like in the same realm is a peacock, because when they get going, they sound like a squealing child. like a cat and a child mixed, making the loudest noise possible.
Right. Yeah.
Goodness.
And no thanks.
Yeah. No, don't need that in my life.
No.
Well, none of that is what we got on here to talk about, but probably more entertaining in some capacity than what we might talk about today.
Yeah.
I'll stick with my 4 dogs for now. I told Elizabeth one of these days when we like go to retire, I want a herd of corgis with all like human names. I think all of them running around with their little fluffy butts would be just entertaining enough. Be like, what are you doing today? "Oh, I'm just watching the flock, you know."
Look at all those corgis.
Yeah. There goes Benedict. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, we call him Ben. It's fine. All right, man. Well, let's jump in. For the people that don't know anything about you, I don't want to spoil a whole lot other than what I've already said in the introduction, but want you to have the opportunity to just share your background, where you grew up, and then kind of, you know, hitting some high points up until now when you're sitting in your room here in North Carolina.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Bryan, Texas, which is right next to College Station. You know, I was raised in a single parent household. Both my parents were still involved in my life, but I lived with my dad. And, you know, I went to high school like all good kids do, and I got good grades. And then I decided, hey, I'm going to go to A&M because that's what was expected of me. Both my parents went
Naturally
to A&M.
And it's right next door. So
It's right next door. I mean, it is what it is. But I went for 1 year, and I was not invested in learning at college. It was just something new. I even am surprised that it was 2004 and I didn't even know how to do email or what the internet was like. I mean, you had to have a computer on campus, and I didn't know how to use that stuff other than for, you know, playing Oregon Trail or writing up something on Word. And so that was a huge adjustment. But then, like, maturity wise, I was not ready for being on my own and not really having somebody like checking in on me and making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I do far better in a structured environment, which definitely wasn't my freshman year. So, you know, slept through a final, didn't pass all of my classes. You know, it was terrible. It was really terrible. And so my parents were like, we're not going to pay for college anymore. So you've got to figure something out. And that morning I went, it was June 6th. I went in to the recruiting office at Post Oak Mall, and I signed up for the Marine Corps. And, you know, then, you know, I was expecting to go to the Marines in November. But I got a phone call like beginning of August, and they were like, are you ready to go? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, can you leave now? Okay. And so I told
real complicated conversation right there.
Yeah. It was like, I told my parents, and they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, I'm leaving tomorrow at 8 a.m. like from the mail, I'm in the mall. And, you know, the rest was driving to Houston, got on a plane, flew to San Diego, went through boot camp. And, you know, after that, I went to infantry school up at Camp Pendleton. I was there for quite a while, you know, due to like injuries and pickups and stuff. And then I went to my duty station, which was in 29 Palms, California, which is like a desert town. And I was there for 3 years. And
isn't that usually referred to as like the 29 Palms Resort as like a joke?
No, 29 Stumps. It's terrible there. It's a great place looking back. I'm glad I went there. I mean, the other options are Hawaii or, you know, right next to San Diego, California, for what they call Hollywood Marines. But, you know, everybody has to come to 29 Palms. Every Marine unit has to before they deploy. So, you know, I'm glad I was there. But, man, that's a terrible place. It's 4 hours from Vegas, 4 hours from LA and San Diego. There's nothing to do but Marines to, you know, spend their $700 every 2 weeks on alcohol and video games and movies. So, you know,
I'm sure that's all you spend it on. I'm sure that's it. Just those three things. We'll just keep it to those three things.
I really didn't ever spend money on alcohol in the Marines. I got made fun of one time because I bought a bottle of Hypnotic from the liquor store and I drank it all by myself. And they were like, "Oh, they called it Destiny or some weird name. They gave me like that nickname for a little bit and made fun of me. But I drank that time, and then when we came back from a deployment, we drank at the airport in Ireland. But I drank probably 2 weeks before I got out of the Marines and got really intoxicated. But, other than that, I spent my money on video games and food or movies.
So things haven't changed.
No, not at all. But, yeah. And during that time that I was there, we deployed to Iraq in 2007. I was there for 7 months, and then we went to Afghanistan about 6 months later, and we were there for 8 months. So then after those deployments, got out, went right back to school at Texas A&M, and then that's where you and I met.
Cross paths, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was my senior year, 2013, or maybe it was in the master's program.
Yeah,
right
I think it was that summer. The first summer of the master's program.
Yeah, that cakewalk. I remember making Play-Doh, and I was like, I can't believe somebody is paying to make Play-Doh animals for Dr. Kelly. And I remember he would come around, and anytime he'd come around us, he'd put his hand on me, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Because I'm sure he was like worried about you, and that was his like Freudian slip of like trying to control you and reel you in a little bit. And he even told me later that he was like, Mike, I was worried a little bit about you. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't sure how you would turn out, but you did all right. I'm proud of you. And I'm like, what? Can we rewind for a sec? What gave you that impression? And then I was like, well, it's probably because we were jacking around playing with Play-Doh. I mean, but when you're doing a master's of education, like it's not just going to be for high school teachers. It's going to be the whole gambit, right? So yeah. I kind of understood that, but at the same time, I was like, shouldn't we be talking about like theory or something, or like strategies, not just this? I mean, what's next? Balloon animals?
Yeah. I remember being worried more about lesson plans, like how to write lesson plans. And then when I got to actual teaching, it was just copy paste. And you just had to make sure you had your I can, I will statement up on the board. That was almost more important than a freaking lesson plan. But
yeah, dog and pony show is much more important than teaching.
I know. Yeah. So
yeah. Man, I want to go on a rabbit trail so bad, but I'm not going to. So you taught, we went through grad school together, and then you started teaching where? Like, I know for those that don't understand, the program that we were in, we did a very potent summer schedule, and then that fall we jumped right into teaching, like full-time teaching. There's no it's not like half teaching and half not. You're full-time teaching and still doing 2 extra quote courses where you have to turn in things. You have to go back. I think it's like once or twice a semester, which for you, because you were in Bryan, was a little bit easier than me driving from Austin, other people from Dallas and that sort of thing. But you then graduate the following end of the summer. And so where did you go teach, and then kind of what happened from there till now?
Yeah, I went and taught in this little town near Tyler. It's called Jacksonville.
I forgot about that. That's right. You went there.
They were the only ones that really showed any interest in me, and I was like, what the heck? If I don't like this, then I don't have to do it again. I can find something else. But I found joy in doing that, but I was not going to be doing well with making $1,200 a month from that job. And so I was also bartending at night on the weekends, but I got a job back at my alma mater high school within, like, I would just say that May I already had a job lined up. to come back to Bryan and teach. So that's what I did. I taught at Bryan for another 4 years. Really got involved in coaching. I was volunteer assistant coaching for Texas A&M and their men's team for 2 years while I was teaching. And then I did 1 year just volunteer assisting. And now I'm in my second year of swim coach at Gardner-Webb University. I'm one of the assistant swim coaches for a private Christian university that's Division I up here in the upstate, I guess is what they call it.
Upstate for a state that fits inside of Texas that we're all used to.
Right. I mean, when people start talking about towns and stuff, I'm like, I don't know where that's at. Okay, cool. You live in Boone, North Carolina. I don't know.
That means nothing to me.
It doesn't. When somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Panhandle, Texas," I know where that's at, or Alpine, or
Dime Box, Texas.
Yeah, Dime Box, even Lukenbach. So,
everybody's somebody in Lukenbach.
That's true. I mean, the thing at Texas is like 8 hours to get out of the state, but here in North Carolina, it's 15 minutes to get to South Carolina, and then I can get to Tennessee in an hour and a half. And there's driving around here is a little bit different. When it says 40 miles per hour, when it says 40 miles to your destination, it's going to take you 40 miles. Whereas in Texas, it's like, oh, it's going to be 40 minutes to get there. Well, hold my beer, watch this. And, I'm just going to try to beat that because it's relatively flat and
it's flat and straight. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking something about Asheville, and that's where we spent our first anniversary trip. And it's all windy hills over there. So, and I know even for Elizabeth's dad up in Jack Daniels, where's Jack Daniels made?
Tennessee.
Well, yeah, Tennessee, but I'm blanking on the name of the city where it's made. Goodness. Anyway, he lives 10 miles from I am it's not Oklahoma. Lynchburg, Tennessee. Goodness gracious. That was going to bother me so bad. Anyway, he lives 10 miles from Lynchburg, but it takes like 25 minutes to get there because you're going on all these back roads and through the mountains and stuff, and everything's 15, 25 miles an hour. And in Texas, like, people think something's wrong with you if you're going 25 miles an hour. Either that or it's a school zone. Those are the two options.
Right. And like when they call something a highway here, it's a 2-lane both ways road. And I'm like, this is not a highway. Like,
yeah, no.
I mean, and I'll never complain about Highway 6 ever again. Highway 6 is terrible. It runs both ways, but I can still drive relatively easy there. Whereas here, I might get stuck behind a tractor or some old person or people with messed up trucks and cars, and I'll be behind them for a good 30 minutes. But yeah, Asheville's like 45 minutes away. And I went up there my first time that last week when we had our power go out. It's a really nice area. It reminds me a lot of Austin, but it's more like if Austin and a ski town were kind of mixed, because it just has that cabin mountain resort town feel to it. And also the hippies and stuff like that are prevalent there, just like they are in Austin.
Not as much in Austin anymore. I feel like Austin's weird phase is phasing out. But I told Elizabeth once that if Nashville is kind of the big sister city to Austin, I feel like Asheville is like the little sister city to Austin. It's like a micro version. Nashville is just a larger city, square mileage, everything. It's just a bigger city, but Asheville is definitely, and it's got like the microbreweries and stuff too. So you get that vibe from it, food trucks, good restaurants, that sort of thing. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, man, for some of your background, would love to know kind of like what's happening with the family and stuff. You've been married how long now? I'm putting you on the spot. What's your anniversary?
Well, my anniversary is March.
You know your wife's 15th. Name.
Oh, I know her. I know her name. But last night we got in a fight. speaking of that, we got in a fight because we've been married for 2 years, and she was reading a book, and I was too. That's kind of how we wind down at night. And, I'm finishing up, about to lay my head down, and she's like, she turns over and goes, "Hey, will you hand me a bookmark?" And I was like, "Mm-mm. We've been married for 2 years, and you still don't know my name is Travis." So yeah, you can tweet that one, but
Good dad joke. Good dad joke.
you can have that one.
That's the kind of stuff that happens in our family. It's like that. I told Elizabeth that, here we are 5+ years of marriage, and the things we most argue about are some of the dumbest things. And we know full well they're stupid things, or they're like obviously jokes, but yet we, perpetuate it and keep it going.
Yeah. So yeah, we were married. We've been married for 2 years. We got married over spring break in New York City, at the Gap Style Bridge. It was snowing. March. It was either March 13th or 14th. I'm pretty sure it's the 14th.
Nice.
But that was a great time. I mean, yeah, we have a beautiful little daughter, Quinn. She's 3 years old and every bit of teenager as you can expect.
Yep.
And then we got another one cooking in the stove, and that one will be here hopefully in March. And it's another girl, and her name will be Wesley Green.
Is that, I know names mean a lot to you, and you've in the past named your kid after somebody that has that played a role in the names of your daughters, or no?
Quinn was more of my wife's choice, and then I kind of went along with it because it was a girl, and I didn't really have any inclination of what a name would do for a young lady. And then with Wesley, Shayna has always really liked the name Wesley. If we were going to have a boy, it would have been maybe Wesley. But I gave Wesley the middle name Green after Green, Texas, because I really have a soft spot for the hill country, and wanted to have some little bit of Texas in her, because she wasn't born in Texas and she won't be born in Texas. So I wanted to kind of put her on a level playing field with Quinn, who was born in Texas.
Green is all of 10 minutes from my parents' house, so I'm very familiar with that spot.
Yeah, that's a great place.
For those that don't know about Green, it's spelled like Gruen. It's Gruene, and that's Texas for you. It's kind of like Bourne, Texas. No, it's pronounced Bernie.
Bernie.
Get it right.
Nacogdoches.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd love to jump into the first real intensive question that I always love this, because even for people that I've known like yourself, sometimes this offers a little more insight, and I get to know people a little bit more just by this one question. And the whole point of my podcast is to have authentic conversations. So I'm going to ask you, and then you get to offer as many or as few examples as you'd like, and as much detail as you want. That could be very little, could be a lot. What obstacles or events in your life have most shaped your character or who you are as a person, and how? So obstacles or events, and how?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I would say that first and foremost, it would be my time in the military. Being a Marine definitely changed who I was. I wouldn't be who I am today and have the same kind of outlook on life if I wasn't in the military. And just being a Marine is just something special. It's just, you're a part of an elite fighting force that has a storied history. It's kind of like being an Aggie. Once an Aggie, always an Aggie. And, everybody knows what you've been through as a Marine if they were a Marine as well. And definitely being deployed to combat zones and seeing action in both places definitely shaped life for me. I mean, it did bring in a lot of stress, but then, that stress was something that I had to learn to deal with. And then, of course, another great example would be the birth of my son, Cameron Barrett Kiser, who he doesn't live with us. He lives with his mom over in New Braunfels. And he has a great life over there. And, I get to see him every once in a while. It's a lot harder that I'm in North Carolina, but the birth of him and then definitely the birth of Quinn, like, changed my life. And all for the better. Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to the kids, it just gives you something to look forward to and to be excited about. It's kind of weird for me to say this as a 34-year-old, but it's like, it's sad knowing that when Quinn is 18, I'll be almost 50. And like, that's half my life is gone when she's barely coming to hers, and I want to be a part of all of it. So it's making me think about how involved I am with her and with my wife, and how that needs to always be forefront in my mind. Like, spending quality time, not just sitting on the TV and watching a movie or letting her play on her iPad, but actually, like, like this morning, laying in bed with her, and she just wrestled around, and I, tickled her, and, we'd play hide and go seek. I mean, we didn't leave the bed for about an hour. So, things like that, the little things are what really matters. And I think a lot of that comes from my military service, where, being on deployments, that, more so in those situations than just in everyday life, that, things can drastically change for you and those around you within seconds. And, that kind of mindset is always in the back of my head. I make it a point to try to tell my daughter I love her as much as I can, because I could walk out of this room right now, or, heck, a meteor could fall on us as we're speaking, and that's it. It's all she's left with is memories. So,
or a random tree branch could just drop through your house, which has happened to people. It's like the weirdest freak of nature thing. Sunny day outside, tree branch falls through your house. Yep.
And when it's over, it's over. There ain't no respawn or self-revive kit.
That's a little gaming joke there for you folks listening that have no idea what we're talking about.
I can't sit there and be crawling towards my wife saying, help me, don't let me lose my loot.
You better not take my money if I die.
Don't take my money.
Man,
but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And as a dad of two girls, what you're saying definitely is true. I feel like there's very little in life that can actually fundamentally change you. And in my opinion, there's a difference between grow you and change you. I feel like you can grow as a person and you kind of evolve over time. And some would say, like, that's changing. I think there are very few things that can fundamentally change your character and, like, your core identity. I think being a parent is one of those things.
I agree.
I think that it's so much. This is a very light example in comparison, but if anybody's ever not had a dog and then you suddenly have a dog and you get used to this mentality in the back of your mind, like, okay, I've been gone from the house for 6 hours. I need to go home and let this dog out. That like second nature kind of thing of this awareness of, like, I'm taking care of some other entity in my life is a whole new level where, like, literally the time you spend away from home will, like, magnify. You're like, I need to get home. I haven't seen my kid. I almost quit a job because I didn't see Charlotte for 2 days, I think it was almost 3 days straight. Not because I wasn't home, but because I would leave before she was awake and I would get home after she was asleep. And I was like, I will quit this job so fast if this ever happens again.
Yeah.
And it just affects, like, there used to be times when I was younger and I was like, dude, if this guy wants to fight, like, we'll fight. And now I'm like, it's not worth it. Because if something goes sideways, like, what's my kid going to do? Like, I know my wife is very strong, but we're a team.
Yeah.
So and there's another part of it that Elizabeth has pointed this out. She said, you've always been a kind person, but you've become much more patient since we've had a little girl. And I was like, you're right. I used to be pretty like, can we get this show on the road? Like, what's going on here? Let's hurry this up. And I'm so thankful that I had a girl first, and I wanted a girl first because I knew that if we had a boy first, I was going to be way too hard on him and be like, "You're not walking yet. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like, let's get going. Come on, we got places to go. Stand up." And now Lily is, she's like, "Nope, you can carry me places. I'll walk with my walker. I don't need to walk." And she's about to be 16 months old. And we're just like, "Girl, let's go." And she's like, "Nah, I'm good." And I'm like, "You know what? Fine. I'll be on the ground with you. It's cool." So yeah, just very different perspective. And I think all the girl dads out there listening are like, "Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
So we've talked about having a third, and I was like, I think I'm ready for a boy. Let's mix this up a little bit and get a boy in this mix.
There's only so much you can do.
I know, and I'm like, I'm speaking it into existence. I'm telling God now, like, we're getting a boy. Like, I know you're not supposed to tell God what to do, but I'm telling him, like, we need a boy in this house. I'm feeling alone.
What you need.
He hears my cries. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, in the same way, he knew that you and I needed some little baby girls in our lives. I feel like he hears me now. And
yeah.
Okay, God.
I mean, if my 21-year-old Marine self would hear, my fortune being told that I was going to have 2 daughters.
You might have started drinking a little bit more. I'm not handling this.
They're going to get payback on how I was as a young man, but. Yeah, I'm very happy, and they become more like your best friend, because I spend all my time with them. It's like when people talk about, "Oh yeah, I went out and went hunting today or went fishing." I'm like, "How do you do that? You have kids. Like, how does your wife let you do that?" I mean,
I definitely think that there's a time to recharge for yourself. Like Elizabeth and I always talk about how we want to be 100% for each other. And we realize fully that that's not going to happen all the time. Like it just functionally can't happen. But as much as we can give each other space to be 100%, because we know we'll be better off for it, and like be more patient with the girls. And if we're not, especially when we were just out of our house for 3 months, like we were both very stressed out. And so giving each other that space sometimes looks different. For me, it's just playing video games at night, decompress. 3 nights out of the week are set aside for Elizabeth. Like she and I spend time together. The other nights we get to decide what we want with that time. But I'm with you, man. Like I want to go hang out with my kids. I personally don't get capped out with time with my kids. I get capped out when Lily starts screaming for no reason. That gets under my skin because my ears are bleeding. But that's about. I don't get worn out from her wanting to crawl all over me, or like she takes her head and tries to. I guess she's trying to hug me or something, but she'll just butt me with her head and then like rub her head. It's as if somebody's doing the old like noogie with the knuckle, and she's rubbing it on my head. I'm like, this actually hurts, and you're a tiny little baby. Like what? And she's just rubbing her head on me. And I'm like, I love you, but this is painful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man. I know that everybody has their own story, right? And everybody has their own experiences. And people meet me, and I've literally been told, like, I used to think you were really full of yourself and like really arrogant and thought you were it. But then I got to know you, and you're actually a really nice guy. And I'm like, let's back up. Like, what made you think that? And in the same way, I know that you come across as a very serious person just because of your demeanor. And I've learned that's not the case. I feel like 10 out of 10 times, if you could prefer to crack a joke at somebody or, make a joke about your name not being Mark, then that's going to be your go-to. So
yep.
I always like to know what's behind the persona that we see, whether that's even your swimmers in coaching. They may not know your full story, or other people that just walk past you in any given spot.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work on how I try to convey myself. I do know that I come across as intimidating. That's not my intention, but when I'm in areas where I don't know anybody, I'm immediately going to have a guard up because I don't trust anybody around me. And I'm trying to get the feelers for the room. But what you said is basically how I am with my swimmers. It's, I like to think of them as their parent or their bigger brother, and just trying to enjoy the time together. They know when it's serious, if I have to raise my voice, and that's only happened now like twice in 2 years. And I like that. I like that. If I did raise my voice, or if I had to yell at somebody, they would know it's real, because I don't do it all the time. They would see it as completely different. Whereas when, heck, I was a teacher, man, it was, I mean, teaching inner city freshmen in high school is very tough, especially when they don't want to be there. And, you're trying really hard, but you're also not taking a step back and leaving your ego at the door as well. So, I mean, it took me time going to a counselor and talking about, issues that I have, and getting the help I needed to actually become more of an enjoyable person to be around. But then on the flip side, it's when I do tell jokes all the time, I wonder if people take me seriously. And that's kind of like, I got to find that middle ground of, okay, is somebody really going to listen to me and let me speak, or have let my opinion be heard? Or are they just going to think I'm just going to say something stupid, or be silly and not serious about the situation? And so they're not likely to ask my opinion. And I mean, that's something I'm just going to have to deal with and work with, and find that happy median. But I mean, I enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy how I am.
I feel like some of what you just said, are people going to take me seriously? I think that a lot of that has to do with the other person also. And yeah, you do have some control over that. Like, if you're literally only ever joking around and being sarcastic, well, then why wouldn't they assume that you're just going to keep being sarcastic? But I feel like an adult who's mature would be able to tell usually if somebody's being serious or not. You and I both can crack a joke and be completely straight-faced and actually leave people wondering if we were being serious or not. But I feel like for the most part, usually the context gives it all away. You mentioned having gone to counseling, and this is something that I've talked to a number of people about, because I feel like men more so than women feel like they don't need counseling, or feel like they're not, for lack of a better term, defective enough to require counseling. And I'm going to say something that I believe, and then you let me know your thoughts on it. I feel like counseling is something that if you've not ever been, you think like, oh, I don't need that. Like, that's definitely great for other people, that sort of thing. But then once you go, you're like, literally everybody should go to counseling at some point in your life. Sooner the better.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I would take it a step further and just, say that everybody needs to be to the point in their life with their own self and be comfortable in themselves to just go and talk to somebody about what's going on, because that's all that counseling is. I mean, the counselor is somebody that doesn't know you from Adam, who is impartial. When that door opens, they've got your attention, and when that door closes, they are focused on somebody else and doing something for others. And as men, it is tough. I think that we'll get better as generations go, and how people are treating each other, I think will get better. But honestly, just something that I've learned from being married is that people just need somebody to listen to. Like, my wife doesn't want me to fix all the problems. She just needs somebody to listen to. And sometimes she does that for me. I can vent to her about things, and I know that there's not going to be a solution. That problem is still going to be there. I agree. Everybody needs to go to counseling, but also everybody needs to just be able to swallow their pride and talk to somebody. And if that person doesn't care what you have to say, then they really weren't somebody that you should have been associating with,
Yeah, I agree.
I think that as you get older, it becomes easier to do that with your parents. Not always like I wouldn't say that's something you just start doing at Thanksgiving and being like, hey, remember when you did this? I didn't like that, but you can find
No, that's
ways.
ideal. That's what you should definitely do at Thanksgiving is you should bring up the past as often as possible and as great of detail as possible. The more people that are present, the better.
Exactly. And live stream it. You've got to let other people
do Facebook Live
and put it on TikTok and just let the world in,
Yep.
I mean, once people just start talking about what bothers them and, what they're passionate about, I think you're going to see a lot of people become more mentally stable. That's one thing that I've definitely been working on a lot with the swimmers that I have is, we're focusing a little bit more on the mental side of this because, like right now we're going through COVID as a team. And it's like, so if one person gets it, they have like 4 or 5 other people that have to go into quarantine. And so that's time for 2 weeks that they're just by themselves and they don't have anybody around. And so it's important for them to keep into perspective that it's a good time to work on themselves. And also to talk to other people because, you're not going to be face to face. So it's easier to say things to each other over the phone or in a text message and, get your point across. And mental health is huge. As a veteran, it's just something that I constantly keep hearing about is veteran health. It's just like, what about everybody's mental health? Everybody right now has problems. Everybody does. There's no difference in me being a veteran as opposed to somebody who is grown up in an alcoholic household. We both have PTSD. We both have things that set us off and upset us and give us, what they call flashbacks. I think it's just being able to reconcile with your problems and express those in a healthy way. It just feels better. That's why venting feels so good is because when you're done with it, you've gotten everything off your chest and you're ready to go. You're ready to accept the next challenge. So, long-winded rant there about.
No, it may be long-winded, but I think it's valuable because, and I know that again, I sent you an outline, but this is supposed to be a conversation, and I like the route this is kind of going because I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I've told plenty of my friends a few weeks back. It's probably close to a month and a half ago now. I kind of hit this tipping point where I could feel like I was going to snap, and not in a healthy way, not in a good way. I don't know if you knew this. I had been dealing with some foot pain, like some serious foot pain, couldn't walk on it, couldn't stand on it ended up being 8 weeks. So 2 months straight, but I was supposed to be on full dad duty while Elizabeth was working. And I couldn't do that. I kept like hitting the dogs with my scooter unintentionally, kept running over toys, nearly running over Lily a few times. That was driving me up a wall. Charlotte was like at the peak of being a 3-nager and just whining about everything. And I was losing my mind. I was so tired of being in that house, the Airbnb, and because it wasn't my home. And I told Elizabeth, I said, I need you to hear me crystal clear. Number one, I'm not mad at you. Like there's nothing that you've done to upset me. Let's make that perfectly clear. But number two, I need to get out of this house. I do such a terrible job of self-advocating. Like when I really, really need stuff. I was raised like you sacrifice yourself for the sake of your family, no matter what. And then I started realizing if I'm at like 0 as far as my internal battery is concerned, I'm not helping anybody.
No.
And so I told Elizabeth, I said, what would really help me right now? I need to get out of this house for one night away by myself. I don't really have a preference where to go. I'd probably just stay at a hotel nearby. Like just need to get out of this house, clear my head, unwind a little bit, and then I'll come back and I'll be good. And she's like, done. I'll even make the arrangement for you. So I stayed at a hotel that's like Calvary Court in College Station. It's like the sister one in Austin at the Domain. And I can say, if anybody's listening to this and you feel like you're at your wit's end, just say something. I would contend that if you're married, especially, your spouse wants you to be in a better mood. If you've been grumpy and all like pent up and stuff, And it may not be that you need a night away, but that's what I needed. And I think that the more that people are honest with their spouses, I think that fosters trust in relationship, trust in the love that you have for each other.
Yeah.
Just saying like, hey, I'm trying to be vulnerable with you right now. I'm not in a good place. So if you've been feeling like I'm being weird towards you, it's because I am. And here's why. And that's why I prefaced the whole thing. I said, like, I need you to hear me crystal clear. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Yes, I am very pissed off. Yes, I'm very angry. I am not in a good place. 0% has to do with you. And I'm sorry if any of it's come out at you. So I'm glad that we're talking about this, because I feel like in the past, the idea of like the super macho masculine man is like you keep it all to yourself and you deal with your own stuff. And I do think there's definitely a dichotomy of like you should talk about something versus you just need to swallow that and deal with it, you know? But it's cool to hear somebody who I know your background, like a former Marine, just naturally, if you're a Marine, you're tough. That's just how that goes. To hear that you're like, no, go to counseling. Like everybody needs to do that. Swallow your pride and freaking build a bridge, get over it, and start sorting out stuff. I think is a really great encouragement. Speaking of that, I wanted to know what motivated you to join specifically the Marines. Was there even like a choice where you're just like, Marines sound cool? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to go into the Army. I'm in high school. I was like, oh man, maybe I'll do this, like go to be a Ranger or whatnot. And then I remember making fun of the Marine recruiter that he wasn't the guy that recruited me. He was somebody else. He was all tattooed, walked around. He did look like a bulldog. He's leaning forward, really gruff voice. I remember making fun of that. But then when it came time for me to choose, I was like, dang, those uniforms look really good. And I don't want to just be another number and live in Texas again. Because in the Army, there's a huge chance that you'll go back to Fort Hood after training. And I was like, nah, I want to see.
And we're hearing that's a really great place lately.
All military bases are terrible. Fort Hood is not really. I mean, come on. They're an hour and a half from Austin, if that. How much? No,
I'm just saying like the people disappearing and like finding out stuff that's been happening at the Fort Hood. I'm like, and not to mention the shooting that happened years ago from the guy that spun up. I'm like, if there's one place I would not want to be, it'd be Fort Hood.
I mean, I'd rather be at Fort Hood than I would have been at 29 Palms, just because there would be more stuff to do. But I also wouldn't have developed the relationships I have. I mean, it's hard to get in trouble in 29 Palms with females because there's not many there, and the ones that are either Marines or they're married to Marines. So if you get in trouble, it's because you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. But you're not going to go out in town and meet a girl. It's just not going to happen, and I wouldn't recommend it even if you've tried. It's so I mean, Fort Hood was not a place I wanted to be, and this was in 2005. So, the Marines just had that mythology behind them, and they do a really good job of getting kids to think about putting others before them and doing something special that others aren't doing. Because like I said, you go into the Army and you're just another name, another number. And it's not a knock against Army people, but okay, you go in the Army infantry, that's great, but there's always Rangers, and then there's, special forces, and then there's airborne, and then there's this, that, and the other. It's like, that's all a bunch of confusing crap about who's better than who. Whereas in the Marines, it's like, okay, you're either an infantry guy or you're not. And, there's no wiggle room. It's like, okay, yeah, there are still people that are like recon and MARSOC and stuff like that, but those are really small in number, and it's not something that, a lot of people really get into. Whereas you can be a scout sniper within a Marine Corps battalion when you get to the fleet, So, I mean, this is that rugged toughness that really is attractive for especially white middle-class boys, that sense of adventure, and it really was attractive to me. So, I like to think that I got as much adventure out of it as I could and learned a lot and had fun, but, I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's awesome. The majority of what I know about Marines as a collective is from the Jocko podcast. Casual shout out. And the amount of respect he has as a former SEAL commander for the Marines as a whole, I think speaks volumes about Marines. That it's kind of like what you were saying, like you can go into the Army and then there's all these other tiers that you could go to, and it's not like one is necessarily above the other. It's just kind of like a left, right, center option, And with the Marines, the way that he's kind of explained it in the way I translate it is that, there's the Navy SEALs or the Army Rangers, but if you're looking for a full arm of the military that is lethal, both the mentality and in action, the Marines are it.
Right. Yeah.
And he and other, I think it's Dave Burke from the Air Force, both have commented on how Marines are pretty uniform. Like if you get one Marine and then you go find 5 others, they're all going to behave about the same. So,
you get us in a group and we're lethal, whether we're in a mission or we're just at a restaurant, and Jocko's also in that same boat when I was talking about the Ranger Army, whatever not, because, he is the Navy SEALs are really the most badass job to have in the Navy. And I'm sure fighter pilots or submarine people, those are cool, driving a boat, whatever. But there's nothing but you in the Navy as a SEAL. Yep. I mean, you hopefully only interact with other people in the Navy. I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. Whereas in the Marines, it's you're either infantry or you're not, like I already said. And, any infantry guy is going to have each other's back, to some extent, if there's any conflict. So it's definitely a camaraderie that's I haven't seen it elsewhere, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, even because you said that the SEALs are the only group within the Navy, that is specialized to that degree, and it was Leif Babin on one of the more recent episodes. He's talking with Jocko, and he's like, I really took a gamble. I chose to not go to West Point, where even if I don't make it as an Army Ranger, there's plenty of other options. He's like, I went to the Navy and I gave it one shot. And I think he actually didn't make it as a SEAL his first try. And he came back around and tried again. And so if I'm remembering that right, I may have that wrong. And Leif, I apologize. You're a fellow Austinite. I don't want to upset you. But anyway, so yeah, that's
like they say, people ask me, oh yeah, you're in the Marines. That's part of the Navy. And I'm like, no, we're the men's department.
False. Yeah. Men's department.
We are the men's department of the Navy.
That's fantastic. A long time ago, we actually segregated ourselves from the Navy to make sure people understood.
Absolutely.
That's great. Tell us about your first deployment. How did you feel prepping for heading overseas? I know you said you randomly get the call and you're today, we're leaving out today. What are we doing? And then you went to basic training, but how did it feel mentally, physically, everything prepping to go to overseas? And then how was it those first few months I think you said you were in Iraq first and then Afghanistan?
Yeah.
So how was that?
Yeah, we were in Iraq first. I mean, that was still during the surge. We left in February of 2007. But we had a lot of time to get ready for it. I like to think of it as, you go to, you're playing high school football and you're an incoming freshman, but you start practicing for the football games in the fall, in the spring. So you're going to spend a lot of time training. You're going to spend a lot of time with people that have already played those games, and you have to listen to them. And so there's a lot of hype for that deployment, that football game. And there's a lot of nerves involved. And I mean, that's kind of how our workup was. And that's what we called as a workup of, the unit came back from Iraq in 2006. And that's when we got to the fleet. So they dropped us off on a bus from School of Infantry. They drove us out there to 29 Palms, and they drop you off, and you're introduced to your unit, and you've got here's your team leader, here's your squad leader. Go get your equipment, and then you start settling in, and then you got a training cycle that has to happen. So you'll have, like we have to hit this many requirements before we're able to deploy. And then we have like a big culmination FTX or field training exercise that you have to pass as a battalion in order for the Marine Corps to say, hey, you're ready to deploy. So, a lot of that is as a new guy, or what they call the boot or an FNG or whatnot. You're just trying to soak up as much as you can. And, it was tough. I had great leaders that, at the time I might not have liked them, but I'm glad they did what they did. They honestly just wanted the best for each and every Marine. But if you sucked at your job, they were going to let you know, and you were going to have to figure it out. And, there was a lot of guys that had deployed already that were around us. And, they tried to impart as much knowledge as they could on us. But then again, you got to remember, these are 22-year-olds hanging out in the same area as 20-year-olds, and there's no parents, there's no police that are standing on the deck waiting and watching for somebody to do something wrong. You're there with a bunch of other men, and you have to fend for yourself at sometimes. But we did a lot of training, so we got to the fleet in April, and we didn't deploy until January. So we were junior Marines or boots for about 9 months, and then we deployed. So we were boots for another 7 months. So, I mean, it's kind of always, you're the first one to be voluntold to do something. You got to go clean out the bathrooms. You got to go, pick up cigarette butts out on the company area, or you've got to go get a vehicle ready or stuff like that. You're always going to be the one to stand watch at night and during the training exercises. So it's very stressful, but it worked. I do remember we did a lot more training in the amphibious assault vehicles, which are the ones that can go in the water. They're kind of like a tank, but we did more training in those than we did in Humvees, which, when we went to Iraq, we never rode in an AAV at all. We were just in Humvees, so I didn't really understand that. But, you quickly settle into a routine, and then you go from there. And so I felt like we were as well trained as we could have been for what we were going into. Our battalion had been to Iraq 2 times before we were going. So we kind of already knew what to expect. We knew that it was going to be in a city type area. And we knew what our mission was going to be and kind of how the enemy operated. And then Afghanistan was just a completely different monster from that.
What city did y'all end up in, if you're allowed to say?
In Iraq, we were in Saklawiya. Saklawiya is, it's a tiny town. I would think about the size of Texas A&M, like how big the land is there. And there's a lot of farmers, there's a lot of merchants and shops there, but Saklawiya it's like a pit stop on the way from Ramadi to Fallujah and vice versa. So what would happen is you would have a lot of the bad guys that were in Ramadi, they would go down to Fallujah to, trade supplies and tactics with those insurgents in Fallujah, and they would sometimes stop in Saklawiya to spend the night, kind of like at a hotel or whatnot. And we would be responsible for making sure that they weren't being able to have or conduct operations on route to their final destination, and also what dealing with kind of like a crime family in Saklawiya. So there was 2 different sides to it. You had one tribe or gang, and then you'd have like the bigger overarching insurgency. So that was an experience, and it was definitely really like very work heavy deployment. You would go on 4 hours of patrols, come back for 4 hours off, and you'd go back out for 4 more hours. You're constantly patrolling, constantly standing post. We stood post for like a month long, where you had 4 hours of work and then you slept for 4 hours, and you had 4 more hours of work, and your days just kind of blended into each other. And then all the time you might have like an operation come up that you might have to go prepare for, and that might throw off the plans that, we've been having for a while.
The rhythm,
yeah, the rhythm gets off. But, once you get back into that rhythm, it kind of goes from there, and you kind of pick back up where you left off.
Yeah, with that, because you mentioned Ramadi, and for literally anybody that knows about Jocko, that was his territory. He made sure everybody knew that the SEALs were there, kind of thing. It sounds like you said it was like a pit stop from Fallujah to Ramadi. How much? Because I do know how intense the fighting and combat was in Ramadi. So how much of that bled over into I kept wanting to say Sacagawea. That's not it at all. But that's the town you were in. How much of that did y'all feel being kind of a pass-through area?
We definitely had an IED threat. I was on a convoy that got hit by an IED, just patrolling the town. More so, we dealt with snipers. That was the big fear. And a lot of the time, our patrols were kind of like a bait and ambush kind of patrol. We'd go out and we'd sit in an area, and we'd see if we get shot at. We'd take the vehicles out. I'm
sorry, my first thought is like Steve Irwin thinking like, I'm going to go wrestle this 10-foot alligator and just see what happens. And it's like, right. Yeah, we're just going to go sit and wait until somebody like flings a bullet at our face.
I mean, yeah, you're waiting for them to make a move. At this point in Iraq and the war on terror, all the brave ones are dead. Any insurgent that is still alive, they're smart. There's a reason why they're alive. So they're waiting. They're watching you. We were always felt like we were being watched, and then they would shoot or blow you up when you least expected it. When you got lazy. So, as opposed to what Jocko and them went through, that's a little bit more what we would call kinetic, because it was still in the early years of the war, relatively. We actually had some SEALs come and visit us at our FOB, and, it was kind of funny that they came in, and I was being stupid little 18, 19. I was 20 at the time. Yeah, 20-year-old. And I was being like,
but acting like an 18-year-old. Yeah, got it.
Like, all the Navy SEALs are here. Oh, bunch of badasses. And then one of them kind of came into our smoking pit, and I was just like, oh, well, I better be quiet. But everybody kind of laughed about it. The Navy SEALs are great at what they do. But the infantry, especially the Marine infantry, we were more comfortable in our role of actually doing more like census patrols and, being out in the population for a long period of time and getting to know the area. Because then once you get to know the area and you start seeing the same things over and over again, when something's different, and that's when something bad's going to happen. Like, that one time that, there's nobody out on the streets, or, kids aren't playing in the specific area, there's something going to happen. And, kids were kind of our indicator of a lot of things. And, it sounds terrible now to think about it, but it's war at the time. But, I would have kids walk in front of our Humvee, or like go stand on a pile of dirt if we thought it was going to blow up, because they're not going to hurt kids, and they never did. So, I mean, that's just how it was. And, we had to learn on the fly and try things, and learn to be very flexible and adapt to the situation as it arose, because you can't keep taking the same route into the fob and out of the fob as you do every single day, or that's when they're going to hit you. So you always have to kind of mix it up. And I mean, I think it worked well for us. We were very successful there. The battalion I was with, the company I was with, great group of guys. I mean, they are all my heroes. I'm so thankful that I was part of them. They did their job to the best of their abilities with the least amount of resources that were given to us. So, yeah.
Talking about some of those guys, it could have been an event too, but what were some of the most memorable moments during your deployment? And that's not to say it's like a positive thing. It could have been a negative event. But just what are some moments that you'll never forget? Because I know you've told me about, I think it was like a rocket hitting the ground right behind your truck or something.
That was in Afghanistan.
Okay. So even bridging between, that was the other one, not the ID in Iraq. Yeah. That was the other one. But story. Just between the two, I know you've been mentioning a lot about Iraq. So maybe shed some light on just Iraq and Afghanistan, both. What were some of the, I don't want to say highlights because that's like a positive thing, but just what were some of the eventful experiences in both of those?
For Iraq, it was definitely a big experience going on a battalion operation. We went down to a little place that another company was at called Zidon. And that was like a 14-hour combat mission. And, we had found an insurgent torture house. They'd found houses that were rigged to explode, that sort of thing. But it was like it was different. It was just very different from what we were doing before, where, we were just going on our normal 4-hour patrol. And then in April, that's when we lost. We had our first killed in action for our company. He was shot by a sniper at the police station, as he was cleaning up trash outside of the post. And then shortly there, April was a bad month for our battalion, for our company especially. And we had three.
Real quick, what's the size difference battalion to company? Which one fits inside the other?
Companies, they're normally about 5 companies within a battalion. And then
Got it.
In a battalion, you'd have about, 1,200 people, 1,400 people. It just depends. And, within a company, you would have three platoons and 1 weapons platoon, and then a support platoon, which is 10 people sometimes. At full strength, you've got a platoon is about 3. It's about 3 teams of 13 men. So you've got 3 of those and 3 platoons. You've got a weapons platoon that'll be dished out to the others, and then you have 3 line companies within a battalion. So that's math. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it would
bunch
be
of people. Got it.
Bunch of people.
Bunch of people with different jobs, and you all know what each other's doing, kind of. Got it.
Absolutely. So yeah, and then in April, our company kind of took some heavy contact with suicide bombers, where they put explosives in dump trucks or vehicles, and they drove them into buildings or underneath our bridge. That was a huge turning point. But after that, everything was good. And of course, coming home, we stopped in Ireland and drank Guinness beer, and that was kind of fun. And we had a good time coming back. But then
you're in Ireland, you kind of have to, right?
Yeah, we were in the airport at Ireland, so it was just us. And who doesn't love seeing about 300 other Marines drinking excessively? And I mean, we some of us had not spent any money in 7 months, which is amazing when you think about it. It's you have over $20,000 sitting in your bank account, and you have the option to go to the duty-free store, and you could buy gigantic bottles of whiskey and bring them back on the plane with you. And you're told don't drink that, but darn well you're going to drink that whiskey. And pass it around. getting delayed on the tarmac for an hour because you got people that are drunk and being loud on the plane. But it is what it is. It would be a international incident these days, but those are fun.
That's like Jocko's mentioned a few different times how like pretty much any general group of the military, you're talking about a bunch of guys usually that have been doing the same thing, being disciplined all the time, and all of a sudden you give them a few days to cut loose with more money than they know what to do with or are disciplined to use all at once, especially in a group. That's why they go to Vegas, because Vegas can handle children like that. Just going wild.
Yeah, I mean we would go to Vegas a couple times, and I just have no desire to ever go back to Vegas because it's just. I mean, there's nothing to do but blow money and waste time. But I'm glad that we did go to Vegas a couple times. It's just so different. It's just so different now, like with the friends that I have, that we wouldn't even think to do the stuff that I did in the military. Just the crazy stuff that would happen on the weekends, or 6 guys staying in one Motel 6 room together, drinking and
Naturally.
going to the strip clubs and stuff. Like, I'm glad I kind of got that stuff out of my system because it wasn't fun then, and it's definitely not something I look forward to or want to partake in anymore.
Even from like a staying up late point, you're like, yeah, you got me till maybe 9, okay, and then I'm out.
If I'm playing video games, I might lose track of time. But
yeah,
and if it's the weekend, I don't have to get up early the next day. So, yeah. And I mean, honestly, like when you're in those deployments, like Iraq and Afghanistan, there is no time to get away. There is just work. The work is better than what you would be doing in the States. Like in the States, there would be times when they would be like, oh man, what are we going to do with the kids today? Oh, well, let's take them to the armory and make them clean weapons for 8 hours.
That's like a teacher that didn't lesson plan something like, oh crap, what are we going to do today?
Exactly. Now, I mean, that's just probably me being the enlisted guy thinking those things. And it could have been actually on a legitimate roster, but like I remember thinking, oh man, we're going to PT, we're going to work out really hard in the infantry. Man, the hardest workouts we ever did were going and playing football against our seniors, the guys that had deployed, because those motherfuckers would, they would tackle people, they would just run each other over. And they had PTSD, and we were like, oh man, we are not getting I don't want the ball. I don't want to.
Don't give me the ball.
don't. There's. It's not tag, it's tackle, and it was fun. But man, it was scary. I mean, I could run a lot better after playing football with those goons.
Yeah, because you're trying to run away from those guys.
Absolutely.
No, man.
Absolutely.
So when you were in Afghanistan, I mentioned the rocket going off. Walk us through what was that experience like, and if it ties in at all. I know you're working on a book. Would love to know kind of what. Maybe it was just a sense of like processing what all happened that motivated you to write it. But what does that book entail? The reason I tie that together is because you may talk about that experience in the book,
right?
But would want to know kind of what happened with that. And I know that you've lost some friends, which is where your son's names came from. If you feel like sharing about that, I'd love to hear it. But by no means are you being forced to share.
Right. Yeah. So when we were in Afghanistan, there was an instance where they dropped a fighter jet dropped a bomb on a target, and it didn't go off. So we had to go down as a platoon plus with attachments, and then some of the Brits that were there, they drove us down there as well to go destroy that ordnance so that the Taliban couldn't use it. And then one of our vehicle got stuck in the mud, and we were the big 7-ton vehicle. So it's the biggest piece of machinery out there. And, you'd need another 7-ton to pull it out. But they tried with the biggest the second biggest vehicles we had out there, the MRAPs. So they brought those around, and then they were trying to attach the tow cables to it. There's a lot of people standing around. And then I was supposed to get out and go help the mortarmen and provide security from the back of the 7-ton. And that's when we got attacked with rockets. I think they were RPGs. They might have been recoilless rockets, but they were aiming at the vehicles that were stuck in the ground and the people that were standing around. So when I was right next to the ladder to get down onto the desert ground, an RPG hit, and it kind of just like browned everything out. I kind of, fell against the side of the inside crew cabin. So it's just metal plating and messed up my jaw pretty bad. Wounded 3 other guys. And then we got up and we still had to fight. And so that was kind of like our baptism by fire, because that was the first time that, we saw enemy was attacking us, and that, I saw people getting injured. So that was an interesting time. It was what I joined the Marine Corps to do, was to fight. So that was cool. But leading into, the book is not just about me. I'm not having anybody's name in the book. It's just written by me. And what it is it's to show what, we went through. Because a lot of people don't realize that deployment that I was on, we were the first Marines to actually be in that area for an extended period of time. And we had absolutely no resources. We didn't have our own helicopters. We were relying on the British for a lot of stuff. I didn't even have a shower until I traded one of those Leatherman multi-tools for a shower, a bag shower that you had to leave out in the sun to hopefully warm up, or hopefully nobody stole it from you and use it at night. We were brushing our teeth with water bottles. We would have to shave, poking a hole in the cap of a water bottle, spraying our razor off and shave. And then, that kind of thing. It was very primitive. And I think a lot of people, they have a romantic view of what combat is like, and it's really not. And that's, I'm not trying to knock any of the current authors out there who've written about those two wars or any war, but when they mention somebody dies, they just kind of say so and so died in the IED attack, or they were shot in the head, or something like that, and they leave it at that. They don't realize, and they don't articulate well, that those wounds are continuing to be in our heads. We were constantly driving around with them, and that leads into the counseling issue, where I think everybody does need to have counseling, because it's okay to express these feelings. So my book is more about what the company that I was with, and in some extents the battalion that I was with, what we went through. And it's not just my story. It's not about me. It's about what the people that I kind of became a man with, what they went through and what they saw. And at times it's graphic. It's going to be as graphic as I could make it, to where I want somebody to come away from that book and be like, damn, now whenever somebody's talking about veterans with PTSD, I kind of get what they're saying. It's not just going to be, oh, so-and-so was killed on IED. It's going to go into details, and it may make people uncomfortable. And I think that that's okay, because at the end of the day, I hope that it brings about conversations, and it helps people come together. And I don't want people to sit there and be afraid to ask veterans, like, what was combat like? What was it like being 18 in a war? I mean, even you and I have talked about this before when we were in college. It's like, people are like, oh, what's it like to kill somebody? You always thought somebody would ask it. And then you get asked by a 12-year-old and you're like, oh, you shouldn't be saying that. Like, I would never I would never shy away from those questions, because if somebody has an interest in it, you have a duty to answer their question. And because if you don't answer it, they're going to form their own opinions.
Yep. And I think there's even something to be said about, like, if you have a hesitancy to answer a question because it brings back bad memories, I almost think that, like, I hope I can say this in an understandable way, but I feel like that's why you should answer the question, so that they know why that's an awkward thing to ask. Like,
yeah, in some ways it's almost cathartic to have, be in a classroom and somebody asks you, what is it like to see somebody die? And for you to talk to them about it, that's a stranger that you're probably never going to see again. And you're telling them something that deeply affects you, and they're not going to judge you. You think they are, but they're not.
Exactly.
They're just, they want to know. It's the same thing with like World War II veterans or the Holocaust veterans. What was it like being in the Holocaust? Well, dude, if you were in the Holocaust, why would you ever want to retouch on those horrors? But they do, because it helps them deal with things, and they're also helping other people learn about what war, what violence, what man is capable of. Because if we're more knowledgeable about that, we're less likely to repeat that stuff.
Yeah,
and I hope that's what happened.
Yeah, I think that a phrase that captures that really well is something I've heard again on the Jocko podcast, of course.
Somebody's not trying to get on Jocko.
Yeah, right. No, but the phrase that he says is, you have to understand the darkness in order to appreciate the light.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great comparison, because to put it bluntly, if nobody ever talked about the Holocaust, World War II, literally, if you just assume that no one ever talked about their war experience, then no one would have an idea of why it's bad, or why, like, things happen the way they did, kind of thing.
Yeah. And to spin it a different way, think about Star Wars. If Luke Skywalker didn't go into that dark cave to face his biggest fear, would he have become the great Jedi that he was, until, Disney decided to ruin it in the second the last Jedi, or whatever it was.
This is the second podcast episode where somebody has critiqued the choices within the Star Wars, like, saga in general. The last one was with the Leander police chief. He talked about how much he hates Jar Jar Binks, and how it was a mistake to tell his police department that he hates Jar Jar Binks, because then everybody started getting him only Jar Jar Binks stuff.
Right.
And I was like, you should have picked your favorite character and be like, man, I hate Yoda, and then next thing you know, you're getting all this Yoda, or Baby Yoda now is like the big thing. Yeah. That's a good point. Once upon a time, I don't ever want to dishonor somebody, so I won't mention the name, but I dated somebody who tended to shy away from stressful or, like, rough experiences.
Yeah.
I know you know this person, but I'll just refrain. But I never understood that, because while I feel like, life can get pretty uncomfortable pretty fast, I feel like with every negative experience, depending on your perspective, there's always something to learn, bigger or smaller, maybe different, but there's always something to learn, and there's always room to grow through that experience.
Absolutely.
So, and I just think that's a perspective thing. I think life is about what your perspective is going to be. I mean, if you want to focus on the negative, then guess what? You're only going to see the negative.
Absolutely. I mean, there is also another side of that sword where, I was afraid to talk about that kind of stuff when I got out and I was in college, because, I knew that there was always somebody else who had gone through more, and that it wasn't okay for me to complain about that. And I still kind of think about that as well. It's not okay for me to feel sorry for myself, or to complain, or ask people to feel sorry for me when I didn't go through what so-and-so did. But, we're all in this huge human experiment together, and we have to learn from each other. You know, that's huge, learning from each other. And then, you know, sharing ideas, because at the end of the day, man, you know, when we're dead, this thing is still going to have the ability for some kid to look up what we were talking about in 2020, you know, and so we're going to help somebody learn what other people were thinking, what veterans were going through, who Jocko Willink was, you know, stuff like that. You know, I think that's important to keep in perspective, is that everybody has a story to tell. It's just their decision what chapter they're going to flip to when they meet you.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking about, because I'm toying with the idea of going back to teaching, and I was just thinking like, well, I want to keep up the podcast. I think this has been great. I've had amazing conversations, and I was just thinking if a kid asked me, it's kind of like the arguments that you have with someone else in the shower, you know, like you like play out an argument and you win every time, and then it never happens in real life kind of thing. But yeah. I was thinking through, like, if a kid said, wow, Mr. Brown, you know some really cool people, my response would be, no, we're all cool people. We just don't take the time to talk to each other.
Right.
Like, everybody has a story to share. Everybody has something they're going through, something they've been through, something that shaped who they are. But we don't really have a setting in which it's like encouraged to talk about that. I would say probably a year or two ago, whenever I would hang out with somebody like intentionally for the first time, like a good guy friend or something, we just go, hey, you want to go get coffee? You want to go get a drink? Like, let's just get to know each other. I would just ask, what's your story? And I remember that one of my friends was kind of like, well, like, I mean, I feel like you know me, but now that I'm thinking about it, you don't really know me, you know, and relationships tend to start wherever you met that person, and you never like go backwards and figure out, like, in a good way. I know this is like a Parks and Rec quote, but why are you the way you are? Like, really, let's figure out what made Travis Kiser who he is, you know? Because I feel like that helps to understand your friends around you a little bit more, even family members, asking your parents that question, like, what's your story? It may be awkward, but you'll probably find out a lot of stuff you didn't know previously.
And people like talking about themselves.
Really, you mentioned earlier, like, you're afraid to like ask a question because like sometimes people don't want to either offend, or like you're afraid to make somebody relive. But you got to remember, people have the ability to tell you, I don't want to answer that, right? So just ask a question, because like you said, people love to talk about themselves. So if something's happening and you're like, hey, how did that affect you? Leave it open-ended, not just a yes or no question. Was that tough? Yes. You know, that sort of thing. But how did that affect you? That's kind of like some of the questions that I've asked here. I want to know more of the story. I don't just want to know like yeah, that sucked or whatever. I want to know more. So be bold and ask people questions. I would love to know, because you've talked about the perspective that you've had because of your military experience. And you've also talked about how even your daughter, Quinn, when she's 18, you're going to be an old fart, older than you are now. So if you died today or tomorrow, what do you hope people say about you when you're gone?
That I just love life. I mean, and I try to live every day like it is my last. Yeah, some days I'm lazy. Some days I have fun, but I just really enjoyed the people I met, and I love my family. You know, especially Quinn and baby Wesley. You know, I just want them to know that I love them, and you know, like I said, I enjoyed life. And I had a lot of fun.
I like that. I can say, and I feel comfortable saying this here on the podcast, but even though the video is not going to be here for people, this is just for us. You look a lot like more relaxed than I think the last time I saw you. And which is weird, because now you're like a parent of a little 3-year-old. You should not look relaxed, you know, but I feel like just the being a parent of a daughter especially has softened you up, and you've been smiling a lot more than I recall other times in your life. So for what that's worth, it looks like life is treating you well and you really are trying to enjoy life.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, and with that being said, man, it's like who I was as a college guy is very different from who I am now. I mean, and you are the same as, and you're not, you're in the same boat as me. Like, you are completely different from what you were yesterday, as well as what you were 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years, and every day is a chance for you to change into who the person you want to become.
Right.
I just want to be known as a good guy, and I want people to be like, man, that guy was fun to hang out with, or, I like talking to him. That's all I can hope for. I mean, other than that, I'm not going to be as crazy as I was back when I worked at the bar, and doing pickle shots for you.
We didn't need to bring that up. I do remember one time somebody, I think this was like, because I think you said one time like you were trading off like being a bouncer or something just to have a little bit more fun, I think is what you told me. But I was like, yeah, Travis he's going to get bored too fast behind that bar. But I remember one time someone was like trying to pick a fight literally right behind me, and you jumped over the bar onto this guy's back and started hitting him in the head until he stopped what he was doing, and y'all escorted him out. I was like, okay, now I know. Don't get on Travis's bad side. Like, clearly, this is not the way we. Like, there was a switch flipped in your mind, and I was like, this is why Marines are known as the crazy guys, because like you just went from like chilling, talking, and all of a sudden, it's like a bird dog when it focuses in. All of a sudden, you're just talking to over the bar. You just gone, and I was like, well, I guess we'll see him in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, which bad news for that guy, because there was 3 or 4 Marines working at that bar, at the same time. So we all were like, when we saw one of us getting in trouble,
I was about to say,
all 3 of us would jump on people. Like, I mean, we did a lot of rough and tough stuff, like Roadhouse kind of thing. But, it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I wouldn't trade any of those experiences. But I definitely would say that Quinn is God's sick sense of humor of getting back at me for all that craziness of my college years and Marine Corps years. But
he's saying you need to calm down now.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you what, she ain't going to get away with nothing. I know everything there is to know.
What's tough for me being a dad of 2 girls is knowing that like they have my blood in them. And so I need to be on my toes, because I'm used to like me, what a guy version of me is capable of. And I was like, this is going to look different with 2 girls. Now they still probably got that mischievous streak in them that they're smart enough to get away with stuff. So I'm going to have to be a few steps ahead as much as possible, but it's going to look different than if I had a son, So that's why I told Elizabeth, I was like, we're going to just speak that to God's ears right now. We're getting a son, that kind of thing.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I know now that you've kind of transitioned up to coaching and everything, what made you even want to be a teacher and a coach, and now you're just coaching? What is life kind of looking like for you now? How did you end up here?
I really felt drawn to the Marines for helping other people. It's a selfless service, and teaching was kind of that along that same path as well. So that's why I got into teaching. And then coaching, it's like, okay, here's a hobby, here's a sport that I enjoyed, and I get to teach other people how to get better at it. And that's what it really comes down to, even at the college level. It's just every day is an opportunity to make somebody better. And if they don't take that opportunity, that's a learning experience. And it keeps me mentally engaged with my work. Because, just like with teaching, every day is not the same day. You could plan it out. You could have world-class lesson plans, whatever those are. And you could have great.
I've never seen one, but I know they exist.
You can have, the top 10 kids in the United States in your classroom, and it's still not going to be what you expected it to be. And the same thing is with swimming. I can give a kid a workout that, Eddie Reese, who's won so many national titles for Texas swimming, gives his guys. But it takes the relationship between the coach and the athlete to make that set or make any set or workout effective. And there's so many different ways to do this. It's like the phrase, there's so many ways to skin a cat, is very true when it comes to teaching and coaching. And I think that they're one of the same. Coaching and teaching are the same.
I think there's as many ways as there are people, right? Because everybody's personality is different. Everybody's background is different. So, us teaching history to somebody, one thing is going to stick for one kid based on his background, whatever. And then for another student, it's like, well, what's going to stick in her mind based on her background, her experience,
exactly.
That sort of thing. And how they learn, their learning styles. That was always a kicker for me. It's like, I got to kind of plan 3 different lesson plans, one for the visual learners, one for the kinetic learners, and one for the listeners, which those are few and far between. But
and I'm still dealing with that too. Like I can tell a kid a workout and they can look at me right in the face and they get it. And then there are some that they're looking at me right in the face and then I see them blink and that they forget everything I said.
They're gone.
They need to have it printed out, and that's okay, because that's kind of how I am too. And that's all I'm doing now is just coaching, and I love it. I got a great opportunity. This Mike Blum, who's the head coach here, really, took a risk and brought me on. And I really am appreciative of every day I get to work with these athletes. And right now in COVID, it's tough. We're dealing with the same things that everybody's dealing with. Social distancing. How many people can we have in the water? What happens when they get out of the water? Are they allowed to go to the bathrooms and stuff like that? So it's every day is very different from the day before. But, by April, according to the president, we're all going to have vaccines. So, that's something positive. But like I said, it's also a time to really work on character. And I think that's something that every coach, every teacher can really focus on. And at the end of the day, this from teaching, it doesn't matter what they do on their tests. What matters at the final grade input. And you as a teacher can change that. And I think that's what comes down to swimming as well, is like it does not matter how few yards, few hours we spend in the pool. It's what the relationship is like and how we feel at the end of this race. But like I said, Stanford University, they're going to the same things we are. If one of their kids gets COVID, they're going to have to go through the same protocols that we are. When it comes to recruiting kids, the University of Virginia can't have kids spend the night and pay for their plane tickets, and neither can we. So, it kind of makes a level playing field. But, one thing is that a lot of these kids are figuring out that they've got to use their brain a little bit more. They can't just do the same thing and expect the same results as last year.
I think even fundamentally, especially in an athletic sense, if you and I both know this, me from the personal training end of things, and you just your experience, which by the way, I was telling somebody about our quote log toss drill that we used to do across the basketball court with the medicine balls.
Yeah.
That was a fun one. I'm starting to get back there. I've been doing kickboxing as workouts lately, but anyway, it's wearing me out. I want to. I'm about to lose my train of thought. And then I'll come back to that. But the idea of, if you said do the same thing as you did last year, your body wants homeostasis. So if you do the same things over and over, you, in essence, will stop growing in strength. Like if you're trying to put on muscle and you keep doing the exact same exercises, you'll plateau. If you keep using the same weight, you'll plateau. If you're using like endurance training, but you keep doing the same exact thing every time, you're going to plateau. So in the same way, your mind works the same way. Got to have new challenges, got to keep trying to improve in new different ways. Otherwise you will plateau. And that goes for athletes, that goes for human beings in general. And to, segue back to the question, how's the 9-round kickboxing going? We switched to that because I have been doing weightlifting and HIIT training, or HIIT workouts, because that's redundant if I say HIIT training. But I was doing HIIT workouts for years at Gold's Gym. And so I was like, I'm starting to get to that age where I'm actually concerned about my heart health. Both sides of my family have had heart attacks. 3 out of 4 of my grandparents had heart attacks. One of them died from heart attack. And so I really need to focus on cardio to make sure my heart is good to go. And the only reason I'm worried about body fat percentage is because that directly correlates to, your vascular health, with cholesterol and stuff like that. And so I need to do something that's a little bit more cardio intensive. And when I got COVID, I had to take a break from that. And one of the lasting side effects of that is fatigue. You get worn out super fast. I remember a few weeks after I got the negative test result and all that, I was playing guitar and singing for maybe 8 minutes. And I was so out of breath, you would have thought I ran around my block while playing guitar. That's how out of breath I was. And so I had to build that back up on top of just flat out being out of shape as far as cardio is concerned. So I love it, and it's fun. It's fun to literally kick and punch the crap out of something. You got to make sure you punch right, otherwise you come home with hand injuries like I have. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying building up to the endurance I used to have, where I'd play racquetball for hours, work out, run, go play racquetball again. And that was also when I had no family and no other responsibilities.
Oh yeah. It sucks getting old. Got to find find ways to squeeze it in and still get my Call of Duty zombies going.
There you go. Well, Travis, I've really appreciated your time. I know we're right up against it here. Would love to end the same way I do with every episode. Just some encouragement. I know that you as a veteran have a unique experience compared to the civilians of us that are all out here, but would love to know, what encouragement would you give to fellow veterans, or even currently enlisted military members?
Just talk to somebody, just talk. And then on the other side of that is listen, listen more than you talk.
What'd you say?
Yeah. I mean, and if you need help, and if you don't let things boil up, because I wanted to kind of mention that earlier when you were talking about when your wife said, when you told your wife you had to get out of the house. It's like, as men, we do that. We bottle that up. We bottle up our emotions because we don't want to deal with the conflict right then and there. We don't see it as a big deal, but then it builds up and then it adds another layer. Don't let it get to that point. Just be willing to talk when something bothers you, as soon as it bothers you, because that's a real easy way to grow. And then if somebody's doing something that bothers you, and you tell them, hey, that bothers me, right off the bat, they're going to stop. Not 2 months down the line when it's all bubbled up and like,
yeah,
why didn't you tell me earlier? So there you go.
Yeah. To echo that, the idea of not letting it bottle up, that's where venting comes into play, which is what you were talking about earlier, where I don't need a solution right now. I just need to let this out. I need to let some pressure out so that I don't pop when I don't need to pop, let some pressure out so you can think clearly. Yeah. And I've got a few friends, one even is my brother, but got a few friends that I'm like, you're my venting buddy. Like, if I need to vent, I don't need input. I just need to let this out at you, you have nothing to do with any of this. So you're not going to take offense to it. And I can be as unfiltered as I need to be just to let it all out so that then I can go make a more mature decision. And I think that it's kind of like what you're saying. Don't let it bottle up. Don't wait freaking 3 months to bring something up, about, you chose to go to this restaurant. I did not want to go to that restaurant. Okay, you didn't tell me. Like, why didn't you just say something? All right, man. How can people connect with you? I know you're probably still trying to figure out the social medias. I'm just kidding. Got to get that follower count up,
Yeah, my MySpace is still racking up the followers and stuff. I mean, if people want to get in touch with me, they can always find me on the Facebooks and the Instagrams and stuff like that. I have a pizza Instagram account that it's just me eating pizza.
Just you eating pizza? Like you do like rankings or something?
Kind of. I mean, I've been kind of off because of COVID. I haven't been able to, and the child, I haven't been able to go out and eat pizza a lot. But normally anytime I order pizza, I take a picture of it and put it on Instagram.
What's the Instagram handle for that? Travis Eats Pizza?
Kiser.
Pizza Kiser.
Yeah, Kiser with a Z instead of an S. But if people want to find me on the Instagram, it's Travis at Travis K 017, I think. I don't know. It's just Travis Kiser. Search that, and then it's me. This guy, his face.
Yeah, but I appreciate more when you have just the mustache. It's like,
oh, that's coming. It's November, man.
Movember, yeah. I need to tell Lofton he needs to trim back down to the mustache for Movember.
Yeah.
He grew out his like a goatee, and I said, "You do realize like nobody's going to recognize you now, right?" He said, "That's the point."
Yeah, that's good. That's probably a good thing for him.
Yeah, exactly. Incognito. Just put some facial hair. Well, Travis, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and encouraging, frankly, other people to do so. I know that everybody has a unique experience because there's not another you, right? So you sharing your unique experience and encouraging other people to do the same is very powerful, and I think will affect a lot more people than either you or I realize. So I appreciate it. Thank you much, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this, buddy. It's good catching up with you. Stop being a stranger.
Stranger danger. I'll try to remedy that, even if it's over video games. We'll make that happen.
Prima nocta over here.
Yeah. Not going to explain that story or inside joke. Not on this podcast.
All right, man.
All right, take care, brother.
Good talking to you. All right.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been the Micah Brown Podcast. This episode was with Travis Kiser. Travis, actually, we didn't even mention this on the episode, but Travis was one of my groomsmen. And so that's part of where the prima nocta joke came from. It's if you know what that is, you're probably like, what even? Yeah. It's definitely a joke that should probably have just gone unsaid. Anyway, I really appreciate him as a friend. He has a great backstory. If you find pictures of him, he does kind of look like a very serious person, but as you can tell, he's a very honest, sincere guy, has a great sense of humor, sometimes a little twisted, military sense of humor, but either way, he's a great guy to know. If you are a current or former military member and you just want to vent, get something off your chest, talk to somebody, Travis is a great guy to do that with, especially if you're a Marine, former Marine. He's been right there with you. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And so I encourage you to definitely reach out to him. I'm very interested in this pizza Instagram that is at Pizza Kiser. That's with a Z, not S. His name is Travis Kiser, Kiser. So if you go searching for him, that's what you would definitely look up. But I'm interested in this pizza Instagram. God, knowing him, it's probably been a good time. He's been rocking a handlebar mustache lately. Anyway, definitely reach out to him through Instagram or Facebook. Either way, you can get in touch with him. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this conversation, by all means, support the podcast by subscribing. You can go to Facebook and like and follow the page, Micah Brown Podcast. You can also find me on Instagram by searching at actual MVP. Same thing on Twitter, same handle at actual MVP. I would love for you guys to join in on the conversation, give some feedback, leave a rating on whichever platform you're listening from right now. Make sure that people get the word out and hear about this podcast, because I do believe in having the most authentic conversations that are possible. If you have authentic conversations, you have authentic relationships. That's all I got for you. You guys take care.